All right, Celtics fans, buckle up, because things are heating up fast in Boston and around the league. There's been a whirlwind of reports, rumors, and speculation about what's next for this squad, and from the sound of it, the front office might be cooking up something big. We're talking potential trades involving Kristaps Porzingis, rumblings around Jrue Holiday, and even the possibility of Boston making a move up in the first round of the NBA draft. Yeah, that's right, this off-season could get wild, and the Celtics are right in the middle of it. Let's start with the buzz around Kristaps Porzingis. Word is the Phoenix Suns have been doing their homework on him, according to recent reports. The Suns have at least some level of interest. And when you hear that a team like Phoenix, already loaded with stars and pushing hard for a title, is sniffing around, it makes you wonder what kind of move could be brewing behind the scenes. But here's the tricky part. Phoenix is operating under that brutal second apron. For those who might not be familiar, that means they're severely limited in how they can structure trades. Any deal for Porzingis would have to match up in salary almost exactly. And that's not easy given how their payroll looks. So then you start thinking, could this be less about Phoenix trying to land Porzingis directly and more about the Celtics sliding into a bigger, multi-team trade as a facilitator? Let's say Phoenix is trying to go all in for someone like Kevin Durant. It wouldn't be the first time his name has floated in trade discussions. And with the Suns aggressively trying to solidify their title chances, it wouldn't be surprising if they're exploring how to upgrade even further. If that's the case, Boston might be the team that steps in to absorb contracts or provide key pieces in exchange for future assets, young players, or even a new direction for their roster. That idea gains even more traction when you factor in what we've been hearing lately about Boston's intentions this offseason. There's talk that Brad Stevens and company are looking to offload some salary and retool around a slightly leaner, more flexible core. Now, you're not just talking about swapping one star for another. You're talking about a strategic reshaping of the roster. If Porzingis is indeed on the move, maybe the Celtics are trying to get ahead of the curve, avoid being locked into long-term money, and position themselves for a different kind of run next year. And let's be real, if Kevin Durant is on the table, Boston has to be smart about how they play their hand. Brad Stevens isn't going to help Miami or Toronto or any other Eastern Conference rival land KD if it makes them a legitimate threat to Boston's chances. That would be crazy. But if it's a Western Conference team making a push and Boston can sneak in as a third party, maybe walk away with some draft capital or a useful rotation piece, now that's the kind of move that makes sense. But everything hinges on what Phoenix wants, what they're willing to give up, and whether or not Durant has any leverage in dictating where he ends up. Now, speaking of trades and value, let's shift to Jrue Holiday. His name's been popping up in trade rumors too, and apparently the Sacramento Kings have him on their radar. But here's the twist: Boston might already have better offers on the table from other teams. One report said Sacramento's proposal wasn't exactly thrilling the Celtics front office. If we're speculating here, and let's be honest, that's half the fun in the offseason, you could imagine something like a DeMar DeRozan swap being floated. That would be interesting. DeRozan's got playoff experience. He's one of the most clutch scorers in the league, and he comes with a lower salary than Jrue. You trim some money, maybe reset the backcourt rotation, and see what that version of the team looks like heading into next season. But then you also think, what's the long-term play? If you're the Celtics, are you making this kind of trade just to save money? Or are you positioning yourself to go after something even bigger? That's the million-dollar question, and it might depend on what offers are actually out there. Aside from Sacramento, the Clippers and Mavericks have also been named as teams interested in Jrue. And again, we're hearing that at least one of them has already made a stronger offer than the Kings. So it's not just smoke, something might actually be in motion here. Now let's zoom out a bit and talk about the draft. Boston holds the number 28 and 32 picks, but word is they're looking to move up in the first round. That kind of move usually means one thing: Brad Stevens has found someone he really likes. Maybe it's a point guard, maybe it's an international prospect. But the fact that we're even hearing about this level of interest suggests they're doing more than just due diligence. They're targeting someone specific. And if they're packaging picks to get higher in the draft, it means they don't want to risk waiting around and missing out. We've seen some names floated, players mocked in the mid to late teens, maybe even some sliding out of the top 10. If Boston sees one of those guys within reach, especially if it's a backcourt player who can grow into a bigger role over time, you have to believe they'll pounce. The Celtics haven't always had a ton of young guards come up through their system lately, especially with so much of the focus being on stars like Tatum, Brown, and now Holiday. But if there's someone they believe can be a cornerstone piece 3 years from now, this could be the time to go get him. And you have to consider this angle to what if this whole draft maneuver is also tied into the other trades we've been talking about. What if Boston packages pick 28 and 32 along with Porzingis or Drew to move up? What if they absorb a smaller salary in return and get their guy in the draft, while also resetting their cap sheet just enough to stay under the second apron? That's a very real possibility, and it would check a lot of boxes. Shed salary, add a promising young piece, and keep the flexibility for future moves. But while we're on the topic of value, let's circle back to something else. Desmond Bane just got traded to Orlando for a massive haul. We're talking for unprotected first-round picks, a future pick swap, and a couple of role players. That's a heavy price for a guy who, while talented, hasn't made an All-NBA team. It also shifts the conversation in Boston, because now you're looking at players like Derrick White and Jaylen Brown and thinking, well, if Bane is worth all that, then what are those two worth now? Obviously, it's not that simple. You can't just look at on-court production and assume equal trade value. Salaries, contract length, age, and fit all play into it. Jaylen Brown is on a huge deal upwards of $50 million per year, and that's going to limit which teams can even consider trading for him. It's not about how good he is, it's about what that kind of contract does to your books. On the other hand, Derrick White might be one of the most valuable guards in the league when you factor in his impact and relatively team-friendly deal. You could argue that he's close to Bane in production and makes less money. That makes him incredibly attractive to a lot of teams. So now the Celtics have to ask themselves, do we ride this core out one more year? Or do we strike while the iron's hot and sell high? That's not an easy call. Trading Derrick White could get you an enormous return, but it also sends a message that maybe you're thinking about rebuilding or retooling around Tatum. Trading Jaylen Brown would be seismic, but again, how many teams out there are eager to take on that contract and make him their number one guy? And yet, with the trade market suddenly looking so inflated, Orlando teams might be more aggressive than ever. There are franchises right now who believe they're one move away from breaking through, and if they view someone like White or Brown as that missing piece, they might be willing to part with a king's ransom to get it done. Brad Stevens is going to have his pick of the offers. He just has to decide how much of this current roster he wants to keep intact. That's where things get really interesting, because if Tatum is untouchable, and let's face it, he is, then every other player has to be at least considered movable, not necessarily on the block, but available if the right deal comes along. That includes Porzingis, Holiday, White, and yes, even Jaylen Brown. The front office has shown it's not afraid to make bold decisions. They traded Marcus Smart, they went after Holiday, they reshaped the entire front court. So don't be shocked if another shakeup is coming, and this is just the beginning. We're still ahead of the draft. Free agency hasn't started yet. Some of these trades might go down tomorrow, some might stretch into July, but one thing's clear: Boston isn't standing still. They're evaluating everything, weighing every option, and trying to strike that balance between staying competitive and keeping their long-term flexibility. So now the question is, what's next? Is it a blockbuster trade, a move up the draft board, a calculated salary dump to avoid the dreaded second apron? Or do the Celtics double down on the core they've built, make a few tweaks around the edges, and run it back for another shot at the title? But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. In what could become one of the most shocking developments of the NBA offseason, whispers around the league suggest that the Boston Celtics might be on the verge of losing the key stars, Jaylen Brown and Derrick White, to none other than their historic rivals, the Los Angeles Lakers. While no deal has been confirmed, multiple sources hint at a massive, perhaps irresistible offer on the table from the Lakers front office. Reportedly enough to make even the most loyal Celtics fan nervous. The Celtics, fresh off a championship caliber season and looking poised to build on their core, now find themselves facing a potential shakeup that could redefine the balance of power. In the Eastern Conference, Jaylen Brown, a dynamic two-way wing and cornerstone of Boston's success, along with Derrick White, arguably one of the most underrated guards in the league, are reportedly the centerpieces of intense interest from Los Angeles, according to Those close to the situation. The Lakers have proposed a package that includes a mix of high-profile players, draft capital, and financial flexibility. A combination that might prove tempting for Celtics president of basketball operations, Brad Stevens, to refuse. The nature of the offer remains under wraps, but the mere possibility of Boston entertaining a deal involving both Brown and White has sent shockwaves across fan circles and NBA insiders alike. Some see it as posturing or a clever negotiation tactic, while others believe there could be real substance behind the smoke. The timing of the rumor is also curious, coming just ahead of free agency, a period where leverage and perception often play as big a role as the transactions themselves. If the move materializes, it would mark a historic shift, not just because of the players involved, but due to the long-standing rivalry between the Celtics and Lakers. Trading the pivotal stars to their arch-nemesis would be a bold, if not controversial, decision that could either accelerate a retooling process in Boston or haunt them for years to come. Meanwhile, for the Lakers, the addition of Brown and White could instantly propel them back into championship contention alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. For now, it's all speculation, but in the NBA, where smoke often leads to fire, fans on both coasts will be watching closely. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.